by resting aside and taking a few days off. No, this sickness is life-threatening. The American politics is in bed, unable to do anything, and has a trash can nearby for barfing. With every passing year, the American politics is polarizing at a faster and faster rate. With this polarization comes dangerous and opposing and potentially dangerous opinions. In response to these opinions, many have sought shouting in the streets, while others seek the safety of what they already know and hold to be true. Specifically, Christians have taken on two standpoints, one of which is to accepting of the things that Jesus in his teaching condemns, while the other responds by completely casting off those people with different opinions. Neither of these solutions to combat the extreme polarization of our politics has succeeded. But a third option remains, and that is the concept of principled pluralism. Principled pluralism involves the respect of other opinions while maintaining your own beliefs. Principled pluralism is the key to the door of virtuous debate for the sake of positive change. It is only by means of this principle that we can understand another argument to make a true attempt at properly swaying them. Christian Ministry InterVarsity defines principled pluralism in 3 key points. Principled pluralism firstly embraces disagreement. Principled pluralism pursues goodness, and it protects us from an overly accepting standpoint and from those who seek to do harm. Nevertheless, principled pluralism relies on the voices that it hears to be reasonable. Most opinions that we, the average Americans, hear on a daily basis are not reasonable. And this is due to the constant online submission of short and random opinions. These opinions on social media are either immediately praised or immediately discarded. This makes it so the average opinions that we hear on these social media platforms are reassurance of what we already hold to be true. If it is true that iron sharpens iron, then each of our communities are becoming duller weapons. And this is so unfortunate because this diminishes our ability to truly reason with each other. This lack in reason will only lead to a decline in the American society, which includes the political discourse. As we grow into young adults with political opinions, we ought to be able to have respectful yet firm conversations with those we disagree with. But why do we need this solution? How did the public discourse decline? How did we become so concerned with the individual and less of the higher good? Former Senator Ben Sasse makes the point that this is not due to policymakers or laws that are currently being passed, but a deep desire that humankind feels to belong. As Americans seek the comfort of their own homes, they waste away opportunity after opportunity to be in community with their neighbors. Sasse points out that what's wrong with America then is one uncomfortable word, and that is loneliness. But surely, our society is more connected than ever through the hyper-connectedness of social media platforms. But anyone who has a phone that's able to access the internet knows that this simply sounds ridiculous. Sasse is right in pointing out that provocative social media is the only profitable social media. Thus, if the only political opinions that we consume are online, of course we will begin to polarize at a faster rate than ever before, believing that we are both alone and a victim. The American public discourse declined simply because people stopped really talking. As American culture continues to polarize at a faster rate with every passing year, opposing and potentially dangerous opinions arise in the public discourse. These opinions are being either accepted or denied without a willingness to reason through them clearly. Should we, the young Christian community, allow for other opinions to be heard and sometimes even heeded in the public discourse? Should we completely cast off those with different opinions? We, the young Christian community, must allow for other opinions to be heard and heeded in the public discourse, specifically by taking on a heart of principled pluralism. From a theological perspective, this allows us to honor the image of God in all people and allows us to walk in Jesus' footsteps by loving as he loves. And from an American perspective, it allows us to preserve the beautiful positive aspects of our American tradition and protects our nation from a totalitarian regime. First, we must seek out to hear and heed other opinions in the public discourse because doing so honors the image of God in all people. An unfortunate habit in our current American politics is a Christian's negligence to his faith in his political conversations. The solution, as posed throughout American history, is to honor this image of God in the person and not in all of their opinions. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote in a book addressing racism in the 60s that there is no rated scale of essential worth. Every human being has etched into his personality the indelible stamp of the Creator. Restated simply, our neighbors have value because they have value to God. Therefore, we, the Christian community, have no excuse for belittling other opinions in politics. Instead, we have an undeniable calling to love. Seeking to hear other opinions is a forgotten way of experiencing God because this stamp of the Creator is on all people. That is not to say that all opinions are beautiful or that they're even good, but that it is innately human to seek after goodness in some way, because pieces of our God are scattered throughout all of us. Even in extreme cases, like the debate over abortion rights, there is a godly idea on both sides that human rights have worth. It is only through principled pluralism, however, that we can even figure out this desired goodness of the other side. And it is in seeking this goodness that is the antidote to the bitter poison of hateful speech in the public discourse. If we Christians seek to honor the image of God, we can heal our American community. Thus, we must allow other opinions to be heard in the public discourse. We must also seek to hear and heed other opinions in the public discourse by taking on a heart of principled pluralism, because the life and ministry of Jesus Christ calls us to do so. As Christians, we have the wonderful opportunity of looking past those in politics who use the name and life of Jesus Christ for the sake of argument to the man Jesus himself. And this man valued varying opinions. Jesus Christ could have spent his life on earth as an apolitical man. He could have completely avoided political conversations and the conflicts that arise because of them. However, Jesus intentionally brought opposing opinions together because he loves the people. This is shown clearly in his dinner conversations throughout Luke. He continually brought the Pharisees to the sinners to teach them lessons about himself and about each other. And surely they learned a lot in these experiences. Jesus brought varying people and opinions together and helped them by allowing them to grow and connect. And we have the opportunity to follow in his ways. Thus, we must seek to hear and heed other opinions in the public discourse. From an American perspective, we should hear and heed other opinions because this preserves the positive aspects of our American tradition. Throughout his book, Ben Sasse explains that the American tradition is deteriorating through social media, separation, and ultimately, loneliness. The solution that he poses is reclaiming this American tradition, which means reclaiming our commitment to the dignity of every person and establishing that our government grows upon this commitment. Said simply, if we want freedom of speech, we want freedom of speech for all opinions. The greatest example of this is the Constitutional Convention. When men like George Washington and Alexander Hamilton realized that the government under the current Constitution would likely collapse, they brought men together to reconstruct. The Constitution that is the product of these meetings is what guides our nation today. But the formation of the thing was laborious. Not only did these men hardly agree about what form this document should take, but they disagreed on the contents it should hold. Eventually, the product that arose was filled with compromises and different opinions, which can only be the result of civil conversation in which all opinions are heard. After this and other events, international onlookers began to admire the idea of rallying behind what we believe. Americans weren't afraid to join together for the sake of positive change. The French Minister for Foreign Affairs in 1848 observed this about Americans. As soon as several of the inhabitants of the United States have taken up an opinion or a feeling which they wish to promote in the world, they combine. If men are to remain civilized, or to become so, the art of associating together must grow and improve. We are losing this art of associating today. Dr. J. Barber, the mayor of Seaside, Oregon, has decades of honorable service in the political and Christian worlds. When I interviewed him, it is evident that these have taught him the proper way to go about political conversation. He noted that unfortunately, in the United States, in many settings, there is a total loss of civility. It is this lack that is completely separating our nation. Americans used to unite in order to grow and improve. Now, many Americans, specifically our younger generation, refuse to associate with those who do not hold our beliefs. This is not how our country was set out to run. In the days of our founding fathers, productive conversation would arise from disagreement. In our 21st century, loneliness is the bitter fruit of disagreement. Sustaining a land of freedom will never be easy, but it starts with the tradition of hearing out other opinions. It is these opinions that make our nation a free nation. Thus, we, the Christian community, must seek to hear and heed other opinions in the public discourse by taking on a heart of principled pluralism. Lastly, we must do this because the path we are currently on displays qualities resembling totalitarian regimes. Hannah Arendt, a German Jew and intellect who sought refuge in the United States, observed this about our epidemic. Loneliness is closely connected with the uprootedness that has been the curse of the modern masses. What prepares men for totalitarian domination in the non-totalitarian world is the fact that loneliness, once a borderline experience suffered in certain marginal social conditions, has become an everyday experience of the ever-growing masses of our century. Connecting this establishment of the road to totalitarianism being loneliness to Sasse's observation that the issue of our nation is this loneliness reveals a gaping issue. We must escape the uprootedness of our current society by boldly associating with our neighbors. And we can do this without accepting their every belief. That is how people can play together on the same sports teams but vote for different presidents. A alongside this point is the fact that we must cast our attention away from winning the argument. If we concern ourselves with the concerns of Jesus, we have no need to win every single argument, because we are concerned with winning souls. It will never be an argument about who has the louder voice, but an argument about who is seeking truth. When we use principled pluralism, we are not playing a winning or losing game. We have no need to fear or snuff out another argument forever, because we've already established that these opinions are held by image bearers of God. Arendt also had the opportunity to observe Adolf Eichmann's trials. This man was a former Nazi brought to the US. During these trials, he wasn't able to respond to a single one of his accusations. And Arendt states that his inability to speak was closely connected to his inability to think. And that is because he thrived in a society where his opinions were never questioned, never challenged. Thus, other opinions must be heard because they allow a society to reason. And without this reason, totalitarianism becomes frighteningly possible. The biggest issue with taking on a heart of principled pluralism in politics is that the respect given may never be reciprocated. Can taking on a heart of principled pluralism ever be worth it if it is never mutual? Well, Mayor Jay Barber says that the key to a civil society is beginning by modeling civility. And he specifically addresses us, the Christian community. He says that Christians absolutely have a higher calling to civility in politics. We are the light, lemon, and salt of the earth and of our communities. It is part of our calling to lead and listen in a Christ-like manner. And Dr. Barber lives this out in his life wonderfully. When he was the mayor in Seaside, Oregon, he decided that he and his board members at weekly community meetings would begin modeling civility in the way that they spoke to each other. So during these meetings, during this time, they would speak to each other in a very proper manner, and when they addressed the community, they would speak in a very proper manner. Excuse me. These meetings that were once filled with debate, harsh words, and spite were then filled with politeful and productive conversations, and the time of these meetings cut to a mere hour. A second, and in my opinion, greater example of Dr. Barber's experience is a time in which he served in California as both mayor and pastor in his town. During this time, he had a relationship with the city attorney, and this city attorney would ridicule his Christian faith at any opportunity he had. Over the course of the years, they had to grow together, but at one point, they were forced to go on a car trip together to Sacramento, a 7-hour drive. And during this time, the city attorney asked, "What is so blankety-blank special about your church anyway?" And it is how Dr. Barber responded to this question with civility, the conversations they had that followed, and the life that Dr. Barber lived, that joined these two men together forever, and eventually gave Dr. Barber the opportunity to lead this man to faith in Christ on his deathbed. While principled pluralism allows the other side to be aggressive, we must play the long game by modeling civility. Not only does this give us the political advantage, but it allows us the opportunity to express our deep love for Jesus Christ. We cannot wait for the rest of the world to be kind ourselves, or to offer up the truth that we know. Oftentimes, we will remain the only civil voice in politics, but we cannot give up. Secondly, is the undeniable truth that other opinions are indeed dangerous. Many college-age students leave the church every single year, and the statistic of students doing so is only growing. Many American families have sought to combat the statistic by protecting their family, by protecting their children from these dangerous opinions. But fortunately, these dangerous opinions have always been there, and they will never disappear. And the amount of kids leaving the faith is not as much a testament to these dangerous opinions as it is a call for us to be better prepared for these opinions. And I'm not calling for us to have an open relationship to different religions or to different opinions. There is truth, and by no means am I calling for plurality alone, but rather I am calling for the Christian community to better equip their young people through conversations, advice, and personal experience. Alongside this is the truth that college is not about a time to slack off or have a loose grip on morals. Your college-age years are an amazing opportunity to interact with many different types of people and opinions, and you cannot let this go to waste. Therefore, we must seek to hear and sometimes even heed other opinions in the public discourse, even though they're dangerous, because it is better than not knowing them at all. The American public discourse must be preserved, and we can only preserve it by hearing out other opinions in the public discourse by taking on a heart of principled pluralism. From a theological perspective, this is true because taking on a heart of principled pluralism allows us to honor the image of God in all people, and allows us to love as Jesus loved, because Jesus celebrated varying opinions. From an American perspective, we ought to hear and heed other opinions because it preserves the positive aspects of the American tradition and protects our nation from a totalitarian regime. Therefore, we, the young Christian community, must allow other opinions to be heard and sometimes even heeded in the public discourse by taking on a heart of principled pluralism. The kingdom of heaven will be filled with people from all tribes and cultures, languages and nations. And we are taught to pray, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." Refusing to seek out other opinions is refusing to grow into God's beautiful plan for us. If we succeed, we can be the solution to the loneliness epidemic that has encapsulated our nation. It is not too late to change the course of history through patience, humility, and compassion. If we, the young Christians, succeed, we can dream of history books inscribed with such words: "The American politics was at its worst yet again, but the Christian community saved it by modeling civility to their neighbors and to our nation." Thank you.
Questions for Dakota?
So, yeah.
Would you conclude with your argument that Christians who are strong in their faith should go to secular universities?
That's a great question. Danielle is asking if Christians who are, according to my argument, should Christians who are strong in their faith purposefully go to secular universities? I like this question because a deeper thing that it's getting at is that, well, should we seek out disagreement? Should we seek out getting into arguments? And I would argue, and according to my thesis, I talked about this more in my paper, but we shouldn't necessarily seek out debate. We should seek to understand other opinions and hear them out and love them. But seeking out arguments is a completely different thing. So, specifically going to a Christian college, to a non-Christian college, because you feel strong in your faith and want to be opposed, I don't necessarily think that my argument backs that up specifically, but what it does back up is that if you find yourself in a non-Christian college, use that opportunity to hear out these other opinions and really get to know them well. I think people who go to secular universities have this amazing opportunity that maybe those who are going to Christian colleges don't. So, if you're strong in your faith, should you go specifically to a secular university? I don't think so. But if you find yourself there, use that opportunity well. Thank you. Sarah Grace?
How do we avoid complacency, especially when like so much of the culture is this? Because like I feel like you're saying you should really seek out arguments and like debates, but how should we still make our opinions known and fight for them?
Yeah. Okay, so if we're not to seek out debate, how do we have these conversations? Well, in our lives here at Veritas, we're around a lot of people with people who agree with us on a lot of ways. And sometimes, we get into little debates over theology and stuff like that. But as we go into our lives in college and maybe into the workforce, we'll get to know people who maybe don't agree with everything that we agree with. And this is the time for those conversations. And it's ideally after a relationship has been built. I don't think that, let's say you get a job at a coffee shop, and there's an individual there who likes to wear skirts and also has a beard. If you tell them that you go to Veritas, they'll probably bring up the fact that, then you don't like me. And I think that, statements like that from people who don't agree with a lot of us in here is a perfect opportunity to, first of all, be loving, second, build a relationship, and then third, eventually bring up the love that you have, why you have that love, and also the fact that we're not condemning, and that proves the fact that we're not condemning them. We just don't maybe agree on the same opinions. And so yeah, to answer your question, if we're not to specifically seek out debate, where should these conversations happen? They will happen. And they'll happen because people have different opinions everywhere we go. Yeah, thank you. Second?
You talk about needing a great community and a good relationship to have these conversations well. And you talk about our loss of neighborliness. How should we build back up this idea of knowing and loving neighbors and being in a community with the people you're around and not making people who wish you were around and digging into arguments?
Right, yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so Sarah Kate is asking, so we ought to associate with our neighbors to have these conversations. So how should we go about doing that? To answer this, I think I'd say that God has put us in specific communities for a reason. And but we can also seek out opinions and let me just God has put us in specific communities, and that is a gift. And here at Veritas, we have a lot of people who agree with us, and that's a beautiful thing, as I already stated. But there will come a time where maybe at your youth group, there are people who don't know Jesus as well. And that is a great opportunity to discuss Jesus, but also political opinions that you may disagree with. I think in the church, even in many churches, there are a lot of different political opinions. And even in church communities, it's a great time to discuss this civilly with people you already know and trust. Also, in jobs, a lot of young adults have jobs. And these are in Chick-fil-A, coffee shops, the library. And these are wonderful opportunities to build a relationship with people you normally wouldn't be in community with and discuss political ideas when the time comes. Grace.
Sometimes disagreements can just turn into petty arguments. So is there ever a time where Christians should just back off instead of saying something?
Mm-hmm. Grace is asking, so oftentimes political debates turn into petty disagreements. So is there a time for Christians to just back off? In response to this, I would recommend that the Christian and everyone, but specifically the Christian, must model civility. And if we model civility, a petty argument will only be one-sided. There's a story, let me tell you a story. In late October of 2015, Yale University sent out an email addressing not wearing cultural appropriated costumes and during Halloween. And this is a good thing, but one of the professors responded saying that, oh, but shouldn't our young adults be able to conclude this on their own? Like, this doesn't need to be enforced. And the students responded to this very aggressively. They saw this as a form of attack. And so one side is being attacking, the other side is seeking goodness. And this lady that responded, his husband was walking to his car one day and he was violently verbally harassed. It was a very sad sight. But Mr. Christakis, this man, he remained dignified in this situation and really did attempt to respond to their arguments. And this allows him to seem like a good and virtuous man amidst trials, even though their shouting and echoing violence seems so aggressive and powerful. And even though this man, I don't think he was a Christian, but he modeled this respect, this civility, and this compassion. And so if we just seek to model this civility and let the other, and even if the other side is petty or aggressive, then not only will our political opinions will seem more truthful and right, but also we won't gain any backlash because we are also being petty. So yeah. Test. Okay, yeah, so Tess is asking about relationships and dating, and what I think about what my argument says to a boyfriend maybe evangelizing a girlfriend. Well, this, I think my thesis addresses this. Let's see. Yeah, a way my thesis addresses this is, personally, I don't think you should get in a relationship as a Christian with someone who's a non-Christian. But if you find yourself in that situation, I think you can model, love how Jesus loved, and respect the opinions the other person may hold, even if you don't love them, and hopefully that will show them the love of Jesus and eventually lead them to faith in Christ also. Boss.
How open should we be with our political beliefs? So should we be waving like Trump flags in our house or Biden bumper stickers on our car?
Boss is asking, how open should we be with our political opinions? So I wholeheartedly agree with Ben Sass in his argument that in his book, he really brings the clarity to the point that political discussion should not happen on social media. So that's one thing I think we should never be open about our political, that's one place where we should never be open about our political standpoint. Do not talk about politics on social media and do not get your main intake on politics from social media. But how open should we be with our political standpoints is a great question. To that I'd say it doesn't need to become more of your identity than your identity as a Christian. And so if you have a Biden bumper sticker on your car, but none of your life proves that you love Jesus, I think that's a disordered love. But if you adamantly have a specific political opinion, but you're also actively pursuing Jesus higher than that political opinion, I'd say that that's all right. And talking to your friends about politics and having strong opinions is not a bad thing. But you must also still be respectful and civil and really truly hear out other opinions. Daniel?
This might be similar to Danielle's question, but if we're going to a college where we can kind of be part of different communities, how much should we try to be part of a community that's different from ours, one we're used to, or uncomfortable, or just more diverse?
Right, okay, so Daniel's asking, so let's say I am going to a secular university, and so how often should I seek out being part of a community that I don't agree with? That's a great question, and I think that we shouldn't specifically seek out being in communities just because there'll be adversity. But if there's a community, maybe a chess club, that you want to be a part of, and in that chess club, there are lots of people who maybe who want to use different pronouns. This sparks for wonderful conversations, maybe not so political, but maybe a little political, and a wonderful opportunity to get to know these people on a personal level, get to know the goodness that they're seeking, And yeah, enjoy that time together. And maybe someday a political conversation will arise. And in that time, you have a wonderful opportunity to model civility and model Jesus. And yeah, so don't specifically seek it out, but if it happens, right, like use that opportunity for good.
Last question.
Elise?
What is the church's role in encouraging principled pluralism?
This is a great question. Annalise asked, what is the church's role for pushing principled pluralism on the pulpit in churches? I would say that the church, excuse me, I'm not calling for a combination of church and state. I'm not calling for the church to be completely combined with politics. But I think that the church could be a lot more loving. And so a way to do this would, maybe be to mention loving your neighbors. Well, let's see. That's a good point. Hold on. So Jesus teaches us to love our neighbors. And this is a key model this so well, and it's something that we must do. And I think in saying that we should love our neighbors and our enemies is enough to prove that we should model principled pluralism. I think that it shouldn't be mentioned specifically from the pulpit by pastors, but if our society seeks to be wise and knowledgeable about politics, we will come to see that principled pluralism is the right answer. Thank you.
Thank you.